I've always loved painting. Painting means so much to me. It tells me about the world. It informs me. It stimulates my mind. It can reassure me. It can solve my angst. Most of all, sometimes as a playwright or director, it feeds my imagination. So when I was young, I knew little about painting, but I found out. I read a book by Henry Miller called The Oranges of Hieronymus Bosch. And I thought, that's a strange name, Hieronymus Bosch. What kind of man is this? I had to look up his paintings, and I had never seen anything that contained such a vivid expression of a man's imagination. It was stunning, it was more than stunning, it was hallucinogenic. And then, naturally, after Bosch, I looked at the other painters of that period, and I looked at Bruegel, these strange, mournful pictures of those dark Flemish villages with those eternal crows always perched, symbolizing so much. And these paintings, again, taught me so much. Then my mind wandered into another period, the Renaissance. I thought, God, how these people knew about technique, the brilliance, the precision, the understanding of technique, and the sophistication of their craft made their works come to life. So naturally, I was in love with Leonardo da Vinci. In fact, The Last Supper I used for a play of mine called Messiah. The interaction of people and what these paintings have. They live, they're vivid, they're not still. People are moving, they're almost speaking. And of course, Michelangelo, Veronese, and the fantastic Caravaggio. These paintings informed my ideas of that period, educated me, stimulated me, and excited me beyond anything else I'd ever seen. But then I started to look at the Impressionists. Of course, I found out about the Impressionists. I was 15. There was a film with Kirk Douglas called Van Gogh. And I was amazed by this film and the man's performance. But then again, through these things, through these stimuli, I started to look at Van Gogh. And I saw how a man doesn't just paint the picture of the cornfield seems to move, it comes alive. He seems to capture the essence of the plants themselves and of the people. The same with Gauguin and his beautiful, romantic, sensual pictures of the South Seas. And then with Rousseau's brilliant, extraordinary imagination of invented jungles, and Toulouse-Lautrec in his nightclubs. So the Impressionists were, to me, a most fantastic period. But each period somehow feeds the next one. So after the Impressionists, of course, one couldn't help but fall in love with the Pre-Raphaelites, people like Millet, Burne-Jones. But then I started to look at the German Expressionists. Then we had the war. And then we had people who could describe this in a way that we have never seen. They became, in a way, the journalists, the newspapers, through these pictures, George Grosz, Max Liebermann, Otto Dix. We understood more about the savagery and the horrors of the First World War. So these paintings continually stimulated me, fed me, educated me, and I started to understand more about myself. And then, of course, to cut a long story short, we had psychoanalysis, we had Sigmund Freud, and we had Surrealism. And somehow from Bosch to Dali, there was this connection. They both had this incredible need to really investigate their dreams, their ideas, their fantasies. And so with Dali, one could not help but be so deeply fascinated and impressed also by the staggering technique of the man. And Max Ernst, and of course, the brilliance of Magritte. And Magritte, one of his paintings called The Threatened Assassin, I used when I was doing a production of Kafka's The Trial, which I adapted. So paintings fed my thoughts, fed my ideas, stimulated me, and enabled me to interpret those kind of works. So we had, from Dali, from Magritte, from Max Ernst, we had the 20th century. It's getting a bit thinner, but then suddenly Francis Bacon evolves. Extraordinary images and a most odd, violent, and eclectic imagination. The following him, Lucian Freud. Quite an extraordinary painter, but there's something about his paintings which captured the period. So what these painters did for me, they taught me about the period that they lived in. If I want to know about the Renaissance, if I want to know about the 19th century, the Victorians, I want to know about the Surrealists, they show me what the period is. Then after Lucian Freud, I look around and there's a dark space. Somehow all that energy which passes, we pass the baton from century to century, right up to this century, right up to Freud, right up to Bacon. Suddenly the baton's been dropped. And there's this dark space. But wait, as we look down into this dark, bottomless pit, what do we see? We see a bed, a dirty, unmade, filthy, begrimed with the emanations of a night of sexual philandering, orgy, dirt, filth, unmade, unwashed. And this is our legacy of the 20th century. And this bed became our treasure, our hope, and it sold last week for £2.2 million. So I think to myself, where is the future that started from Bosch, from all these people, from Bruegel, right through to Renoir, to Dali? What has happened? We're left with a bed. But then I discovered Peter Howson. And I looked at his paintings and I thought, oh, thank Christ! Thank Christ, someone is there carrying the baton. There I see again, there I can see the glimpses of Bosch, of Caravaggio. I can see the power. And I say to myself, thank God for Peter Howson. This painting is called Crusade for obvious reasons. And I saw it, and of course, it contains everything that is Peter Howson. It's explosive, it's energy, it's acidic, it's brutal. I believe, as far as I remember, that Peter Howson painted it almost in one session. It took him maybe 24 to 30 hours with just a few breaks. This is the kind of man that when he gets obsessed with an idea, he cannot stop. He almost disembowels himself and puts all his entrails out there for us to see. That may sound a little bit of an exaggeration, But he has this ability to almost punish himself. And this, of course, is about the invasion of Iraq. What he's done, he's created a monster. And this also comes almost from the German Expressionist school. It could be one of those pictures of George Grosz. It's a monstrous being, almost surrealistic, bursting through with his fist. And you have the emblems of the United States flag, Christian church, the Star of David of Israel. It also shows maybe influence that he admits he has of Goya and Goya's brutish war paintings. So I saw this painting and I wanted to buy it, and it went to auction, and to my astonishment, nobody wanted to bid for it, because there's something about Peter that is so intense and so naked, so raw and savage. And we're living in an age now, possibly, where we like our painters to be a little more civilized. So, nobody bid for this incredible painting, so I had to have it, and I did. It's called The Last of the Mohicans. It's a figure somewhere by a bridge. Howson has this empathy for the down and out, for the rejected, for the outsider, the loner. He has a feeling for them, maybe identifies with them, and maybe has a compassion for them, a kind of respect. So he is called The Last of the Mohicans. He's got a Mohican haircut. He's an outsider. People are pointing at him. People are ridiculing him. And as often in his paintings, there is a sewer. So this is where the common man lives and breathes. He's looking out, clutching himself with a kind of raw defiance. Many people don't want to buy his paintings because they may be too severe, they're too savage, they're too raw, they're somehow in your face, but they're magnificent. Now, Howson became, for me, one of the greatest painters that Scotland's ever produced. And he was chosen to be the war painter for Bosnia. So he went out there, and some of his pictures from Bosnia are direct legacies from Goya. They're so horrific. They're beyond horror. They're so, in fact, unbelievable that you look at them and say, this tells me more about the horrors of war than any photograph, than any piece of journalism. And here, the woman's escaping, and she's at the border. It's called At the Border. And I've never seen such a picture containing female woe, written so large in everything to do with this painting. Here you have this woman with her eyelids lowered, her angst, yet her strength, holding this boy who's gripping onto the mother. Her arm is going round, holding the newborn baby who is crying, arms outstretched. And you look at that woman's face, it's so utterly, terribly moving. It's haunting. One of the most amazing pictures to come out of the Bosnian situation is called The Rape. It's the rape of a Muslim by a Serbian. The physical nature of this is absolutely phenomenal. It is electrifying in its movement. They move and twist and turn. They are galvanic, and you get the feeling, looking at his paintings, that you can almost hear them. And whilst this picture is, you might say, repellent, yet there's something curiously beautiful about it. Now here, this is the drummer. It's a massive picture. And when I saw it at Flowers Gallery, and Flowers Gallery have been supporting Peter Howson for a number of years, And I saw this painting. It was expensive, so, Matthew Flowers allows me to pay it off in installments, because I thought I had to have it. And this was probably one of his supreme paintings. And yet there was something about the shape, the bodies, muscularity. He understands anatomy. And this is a working class people. And yet gives them a dignity and an aura which you rarely see in paintings about the working class. And then I thought, it has a spiritual power to it as well. In factories throughout England, large factories used to have the works band. And this is like a factory works band. So the men have come out, and what they're doing, they're working together. They're beating the drum. But when I looked at the sticks, they're matchsticks. So I thought, this is a matchstick factory. And here they're beating their lives, beating their passions and their beliefs and their connection. And this is what makes his paintings so unique, is that people in it are moving and they're connected. They relate to each other. They need each other. As I look at each face, although it's a cliche to talk about the romance of the working classes, but here you can admire these people. You could trust them with your life if you were in a trench. These are the people that keep the nation, if you like, alive, defended with purpose and with pride. And I never tire of it. Here's the painting. It's just of a local guy with a cigarette. The man is almost looking like he's dancing, but he's not. It's just a normal gesture of a down and out, pitiful, neglected, abused, rejected man. It's used in the body. His body is telling you he has a kind of awkwardness. And I've seen that in Glasgow. I've taken photographs of people standing outside pubs. Their bodies are somehow, they're imprisoned in them. And yet that gives also a kind of energy of the man and a kind of strange heroism. This was my first painting which I thought I had to have. I was in Edinburgh. In a gallery I saw this. It's called The Last of England. I was astonished because I thought, at last I'm seeing painting that moves me, painting that's articulate, painting that has skill, painting with definition, painting with technique. I thought, at last it speaks, and it also is so modern. There are 5 people on a beach, and this is the ordinary working man's escape. And yet there's something quite brutal in this man. And it's yet he's wearing a pair of fancy flowered shorts, so he's a little bit trendy, and a baseball cap. And the woman has that kind of slightly muscular body of a typical working class girl. Another friend is having a piss by the sewer. So here they are, the ordinary people of England, who are normally ignored, normally neglected. We are indifferent to them. But what Howson has done, he brings them to life. He makes us see them. He makes us not only see them, but value them. A lot of painters, including the wonderful Lucian Freud, painted pictures of people who were in repose, who were sitting, sometimes asleep, sometimes they look half dead. What's so great about Howson is that all his paintings have life. They speak to you, they move, they are telling you a story. This is his connection with the Renaissance painters. The Renaissance painters always told you a story. They conveyed things. You didn't need to learn the language. Most of the people couldn't read or write, but through the paintings, they told you a story. They told the story so vividly, you could almost hear the paintings. And this is what Howson does. You hear him Throughout all those paintings, you can hear him.